Hi, Monty. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Robert?
Good. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time today. For those that don't know, Monty, do you want to give us some background on who you are and the path to how you got to what you're doing today?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm Monte Anderson, and I'm a real estate developer in the Dallas, Texas area. In fact, I work on the southern side of Dallas County, which is the kind of have-nots side of the city. So the opposite of the haves in the north side of Dallas. But I've been in this business. My company was 32 years old on October 9th. We're a full service real estate company. We do leasing, management, development, construction. We raise our own money. I sign the note. I sign, personally guarantee all the notes. So we're basically a full service real estate company, but a really old fashioned in a way that we do all these different things. We still do them, and we do the hard work. And but I started as a neighborhood activist, and then I became a real estate agent because I thought I could bring people to Southern Dallas as a real estate agent, but nobody would come. So none of the developers would come. So we figured out we got to have to do it ourselves. So out of pure desperation, 32 or more than that years ago, really 35 years ago, we started doing this kind of work.
That's great. Monty, how do you identify potential projects? I mean, you certainly have carved out a niche where you are location wise, but even within that market, there's so many different opportunities. How do you decide what is a good opportunity and what's one where you're going to pass?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm kind of an idealist, so I'm always looking at the cool stuff, always looking at, and often I get to do those things actually, but I'm really an opportunist. I'm looking for the opportunity to buy something in the Dallas area, especially these days. Even in Southern Dallas, it's gotten a lot better. I'm always looking for really an opportunity. I mean, someplace I can get something really beat up, which means it's cheap, something I can turn around, I can retrofit, I can split up into little pieces. I'm looking for those kind of opportunities, and they kind of guide me, but they're also guiding me within my farm. Part of the philosophy that we have at Neighborhood Evolution, which I'm involved in also now, is that farming. That commitment to a place for your whole life. I mean, I committed to what I'm doing back in, like 1986 or so, many years ago. And so I'm still there. I'm still doing the same thing I committed to a long time ago, which was to make, our community a better place to live for my kids and grandkids.
It's certainly a different approach that most developers take. You really are community focused, community oriented. I'm just wondering, you know, how did that come to be? How did you find that's a special approach? How'd you go against a grain?
Yeah. Well, like many years ago, I actually started as a motocross racer. Okay. I traveled around the country racing motorcycles and didn't go to school. you know. And then my dad was in the construction business, and he went around the country, sheetrocking malls and things like that back in the 70s and 80s and stuff when malls were still being built. And I was always questioning because at the end of my motocross career, I had to go work to work doing something, and nobody would hire me. So he hired me to haul sheetrock down the road, to different places. But I said, hey, how come you never? And I didn't like to travel. So I said, how come you never get any work locally in Dallas? He goes, well, I just can't get any work. I just bid it. I can't get it. I can get it down in College Station or in Oklahoma City or wherever, Louisiana. He could get work. And I said, well, there's got to be a way to get this work. And so I began to search, different avenues of getting involved around business people. And so one of the ways was getting involved in chambers of commerce. And so I became kind of this membership, a membership, like salesman for the local chambers of commerce. I just sold memberships. I helped them raise money. I did all that stuff. I got to know people all in the community through the chambers of commerce back in that day, which are more relevant actually than they are today. And in the meantime, in doing that, I got involved in community activities. And as I got involved in community activities, I realized how it took community champions, people that really cared about their place to really make changes. And people had left my community over my lifetime. So I realized that people left places they love. They don't leave places they love. And so they
Mm.
must not love these places. So we had to build more lovable places. And that's kind of where it started. From that point on, I became like a community development corporation, which are mostly they're nonprofit. Most of those are, but we're like a community development corporation that's for profit. And I mean, some other things happened. You know, I had some experiences. I'll just say that I just had a
Sure.
spiritual experience many years ago that said, okay, basically, you're going to do this. You know, you're going to stay in this. This is where you're. I've planted you, and this is where you're going to work, and this is where you're needed. You know, you're not needed in North Dallas. You're
Right.
not needed in Fort Worth. You're not needed in Houston. You're needed right here in your own community, and nobody else is doing it. And so this is
Describe
your opportunity.
that. That's really interesting. Just paint the picture for us. Describe what was the environment like, in that localized market,
And you know, when I was in about the seventh or eighth grade, um, mostly lived in white suburb, you know, part of the city, but southern Dallas, kind of white suburban areas. And integration started in busing, you know, school busing. And I remember really clearly, and when I was that age, that one black family moved into our neighborhood, and everybody on the street put their house up for sale. Everybody
Wow.
did, and our neighborhoods just abandoned. They were just abandoned. Everybody except my dad. Everybody except us. We were like the only ones. And he said, "Look, these are people just like us. We hadn't been around different kind of people at that time." And he said, "We're going to stay." You know, and I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like it that all my friends moved away. You know, and I was stuck here. And so we stayed and learned how to, you know, go to school here. And finally, he did move. He did move, but I stayed going to Dallas schools. We moved south, and but the area just abandoned. You know, I mean, people abandoned their homes. I mean, there
Yeah.
were homes that were back then that were really cheap, but they went down 10%. They went from a $30,000 home down to a $3,000 home, and the area just was devastated across the board. I mean, people bailed out of the cities, and the suburbs around us grew like crazy, and then deterioration, rental properties, deterioration, strip
So
centers vacated.
a whole cycle, a whole downturn, and now you're seeing, for tell us about kind of the pivot and what kind of led to the comeback story, because everybody likes to hear a good comeback story.
So for me, what happened to me, the experience that I had that happened to me said, you know, I intended to move from here. I mean, I
Right.
intended to move to a north suburb. And in fact, I was getting ready, I was packing up and getting ready to go. And I kept having this kind of sickness in my pit of my stomach every time I tried to leave. And at the same time, I kept getting opportunities like money, you know, money
Sure.
opportunities to do because nobody was here to do them. I was doing brokerage, real estate brokerage work, and a little bit of property management, construction at the time, and so I kept getting these opportunities to do work here. So when I had this experience, it made me see everything different. It made me because basically all of my options were taken away. Options Real Estate, my company, my options were taken away, and I was going to stay here for the rest of my life, no matter who came. And once I made that decision to stay, and that's
Mhm.
part of our farming philosophy. Once I made that decision to stay, my attitude changed.
Hmm.
I changed my attitude, and I started to see the good in what was here. And one thing at a time. I mean, one small, you know, project at a time. There was an abandoned country club over here. I bought a bunch of property and built some townhomes on the side of it. And, you know, people started coming back because they were built small. And so baby boomers
Hmm.
started coming back. Then we figured out, well, what else can we build that people would come back? Well, we can build an office building for the Allstate insurance guy. You know, we can build, uh, if we can get just a small restaurant, if we can just get a small snow cone stand. Okay, that snow cone stand, small snow cone stand, makes people excited. I mean, who doesn't get excited when mom and dad and the kids say, "Let's go get a snow cone," you
Right.
know? And so, trying to figure out what would be, you know, what would be the best thing to do, and by being involved with the cities, you know, somebody like me who was interested in the community and interested in building, that you know, the communities like that, and they wanted me to try to build things in their community. Now, over the years, you know, they became, you know, it's like, oh, he's the bad developer getting all the incentives from the city. So my honeymoon period with cities in the South didn't last that
Yeah.
long. I'll say.
There's so many different stakeholders in each project. How do you manage relationships with every stakeholder? I mean, it's a real juggling act.
Yeah, I always say it, if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a whole community to build a building or rebuild a building. I mean, building inspectors,
Yeah.
politicians, plumbers. I mean, it takes everybody. I mean, when you lived here your whole life, okay, and you don't work all over the place, which I do work all over the country, teaching and coaching these days, but I only do the real estate development work in my southern Dallas County home area. And you just get to know people, and you just remember things, and you have to be highly organized to do what I do. You have to be, I have good people here, and most people have been with me for 20 years, here. And the problem with that is we're getting older.
Yeah.
So, but my daughter and my granddaughter are here in my company now, ready to replace me as I get near graduation. But yeah, managing those relationships, they come from treating people right. I mean, hopefully, I didn't always treat. I mean, I can't say I always done the right thing all the time, but I learned over the years, you know, um, loyalty to treating my subcontractors, my employees, and people like that, like customers. Treating them like customers. They take care of me now. We take care of each other. In fact, when we negotiate these days, quite often I'm negotiating for them.
Yeah.
I want them to have. It needs to be a fair deal. And when you get that kind of reputation, then you can get all kinds of stuff done. I mean, I can move. I can move mountains. Down here, I can move shopping centers over. I can build apartments on parking lots. I get the zoning for it. I rebuilt a hotel. I rebuilt the Texas Theater. As a volunteer for the Oak Cliff Foundation, where Oswald was captured after after he allegedly
Right.
assassinated President Kennedy. That was a huge, heavy lift. I mean,
Right.
that was a heavy lift to do that. Now today, it's back in the hands of the private sector. That's in and on the tax rolls.
What
That property is.
what are some of the projects you're most proud of? I mean, you're on your website, you have won so many awards, so many accolades. Is there any one project that you look back at and are most proud of? And I'd love to hear the story behind it and perhaps why you're so proud of a
Yeah.
certain project.
Well, there are so many, and they're all special. They're all special at the time. But the one, it has to be, and it doesn't have such a happy ending. But it was the Belmont Hotel. And the Belmont Hotel was a motor court hotel, on the highway, the old highway from Dallas to Fort Worth. But it was a beautiful architecture up on a hill,
Hmm.
designed by a guy named Charles Dilbeck, who was a local great architect. And um, we bought it. It was 30% habitable, and not even really that. It was, fleas and drugs and bad, and restored it back in 2005. And it nearly broke me. I mean, it nearly bankrupted me. It came, I mean, we sold everything. I sold my house. I mean, refinanced my house, my
How large
car.
was the project? How many hotel rooms? How many keys? What was
68,
the budget
68,
for?
68 hotel rooms. It was about
Mhm.
a $6 million,
Okay.
project with a restaurant, a bar, outdoor venue, pool up on a hill. It's a beautiful little place. And it took us, from 2005 to around 2011, nearly took us down, but we
What
didn't
was
quit.
the root cause when you say almost took us down? What were were there just a bunch of issues, or was it something in particular that you didn't foresee?
It was just everything, ignorance, arrogance, both on my part, because I thought I could do anything.
Yeah,
And then running a hotel was not real estate. Okay.
it's a real operating business.
You had to rent rooms every night, and running a restaurant. I mean, I hate to say this, it's embarrassing. I mean, we were losing $30,000 a month at one point.
My
And the more
goodness.
we sold, and we just didn't know what we were doing. And it was in an area that was very edgy, coming out of Dallas, over in West Dallas. We
Hmm.
were the first ones there. We were the pioneers. You know, we it was just, we just didn't know what we were doing, but we learned to do it. I mean, first we hired managers too.
Yeah.
And the managers, we had three management companies, and they were the worst. They got worse every time. And so finally, meeting with the bankers one day, one of the bankers, I said, "Well, what would you do?" And he said, "Because we didn't know what we were going to do because we're still losing." He said, "Well, I just move in and run it myself," and I did that. Moved
Oh wow.
in and ran it myself, and worked at the real estate company in the day, and came down there at night.
How many
We
years was that? How long did you do that for?
we did that for like 5 years, 6 years. Did
Wow.
that for 5 years, and we got it right. And then all of a sudden, one day, somebody came along and made us a big offer, a huge offer. We got all of our money back. I got everything back. I invested in several different projects after that, which were great projects like Tyler Station and some others. And then the people that bought it just did everything we were doing. They did the opposite.
Of course. New buyer, right? Yeah.
New buyer, and they just trust fund kid ended up with it after two or three people, and they just let it go. And during COVID, they shut it down, and they've been trying to sell it since then. And they told me a couple of times, they said, we had no idea how personally involved you were with this.
Yeah.
We really didn't have any idea. And we were all in. I mean, we were going to go down. We were going to lose everything we had to make sure. I mean, that's our philosophy too, right? Is we're not going to leave our projects behind at all. We're going to use every resource we have to make them work. And once you do that, that kind of attitude helps you too.
It's a different mindset. And I think most developers don't have that kind of mindset that it takes. How is that project, or maybe how do you assess risk now, sort of going forward when you're looking at new deals, new projects? How do you assess risk, or how much of it is a gut feel versus analytical number crunching? I know it's a little bit art, a little bit science. What's your philosophy?
Well, it's a lot both. I mean, I'm really a person that's really a gut instinct guy for sure on everything I do. I have really good, instincts. In my farm, I have really good instincts. I was meant to do this. I mean, this is kind of like somebody knowing, finding out what you were supposed to do, and that's what I
Yeah.
do, and I know that. And so these days, what I do is I do a lot of sketches, and I teach this too. Lots of simple sketches, and I call it walking pro formas. So we
Okay.
sketch and do these walking pro formas, and these are like gut instincts. We think we can get these rents, and we think the expenses are going to cost this, and we think the cost to build is going to cost this. And will the numbers work? Are
Hmm.
we in the ballpark? Then once I know we're in the ballpark, then we hire architects, and
Yeah.
engineers, and then we start spending money. And so these days, I would like to say that I'm a little smarter and a little more scientific, but I don't know. I'm doing a project right now that really, I'm out there on a limb again. Uh, it's just, it's that thrill I need as I did as a motocross racer, being 50 feet in the air. I mean, you need, you know, you
That
get
thrill. Yeah.
addicted to that, or drama. You're addicted to the drama. I call it these days. I'm addicted to drama, I think. But yeah, but I'm still the guy that's willing to take a risk. I'm still the guy that's saying, hey, we could put a hotel in the back end of this strip center, and 50 apartments on the parking lot. And my bankers would go, well, I'm never going to give you money to put a hotel in the back of the strip center, and we do it anyway, so
It takes a real out of the box thinker to do some of these mixed use projects, and um, yeah, I mean, truly incredible.
Well,
Go ahead.
the interesting thing is when you commit to your farm, okay, the philosophy of we call it the 12 steps of town making that we use at Neighborhood Evolution. But when you commit to your farm, which is step number one, and you follow these steps, when you make these commits, you get lucky.
Mhm.
The laws of the universe smile upon you, because these are laws. These are like natural laws. I'm not inventing anything. I'm following patterns, natural patterns. I'm looking for market. It don't matter what I think.
Yeah.
What matters is what the market thinks. What tenants think, what they need, what our young people need today. It matters. What I think is irrelevant, really. I'm just following the patterns and kind of filling the pieces. What's missing? What's
Yeah.
missing in the neighborhood? What can we do like you say, okay, well, Monty, you're going to put a boutique hotel in the back end of this strip center. Well, I wasn't going to put 100 rooms back there. I'm going to put 12 rooms back there. 12 rooms is not going to break us. You
Yeah.
know, and we'll see if that works. And so an incremental. That's one thing when we started the Incremental Development Alliance back in 2015, but I'd learned how to do this work incrementally, where I could cut it up into pieces and I could limit my risk. Instead of signing a $7 million loan, I could sign $1.5 million at a time, do a little leasing, do another 1.5 million. That costs more.
Right.
Okay. And it's not the way Wall Street wants to look at something. Okay. It's not the way, but it is the way we built this country.
Right.
We built it incrementally. We didn't build it all in one nice, neat development.
You work on several different projects at once. Is there any project right now that you're looking forward to that you're really excited about? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, there's two things really right now, but one of them is what I call the roommate house. And, I'm looking at affordable housing wherever we go in the country these days. And we're teaching that if you're in an affluent neighborhood or in your poor neighborhood, the most struggles we have are affordable housing.
Right.
So I'm taking a suburban house on an acre of land and I'm cutting it up into, with a pool house and cutting it up into 5 different units. And I call it the aging baby boomers suburban house hack, aging in place,
Yeah.
roommate house. And so the house is cut up where you have these locking doors where everybody has their own entry and
Okay.
everybody. So a multi-generational where like my 80 something year old mom could live with me, but not live with me. She's
Sure.
got her own. She's got her own entry. She's got her own little. It'd be like an assisted living in the edge of the house. So my 18-year-old granddaughter could also live with me, but she's not in the house with me. So it's like baby boomers, and it's really unbelievable. We're just about finished with it. I'm going to move in it because I have to test it myself,
Sure.
and I'll have myself plus 4 other occupants in it,
How
family.
did that idea come about? Was that just out of need and sort of thinking if I need it, there's likely other people that are going to need it as well?
Yeah, think about an elderly parent right now going into assisted living or nursing care or any of those. It's going to be at least 5,000 a month or more.
Right.
So you could take these bigger 3,000 square foot, 4,000 square foot homes that families don't live. We don't live like we did, in 1970. Today, we're not living in those, and so you got these. What are you going to do with these? And they need to be more density in them. And
Yeah.
so, and with your aging parents or your kids coming home, they have a place to live, but not live with you. See, I didn't want to live with anybody. I didn't want somebody in my kitchen, messing all my stuff up or drinking my milk,
Sure.
So you got your own place, but I can take care of you and you can take care of me, and we can take care of each other. But out of that pure demand, if you think about it today, it's so needed, and young people going away to school and coming back home, they can't afford,
They're
$2,000 a month for a 1 bedroom
living in
apartment.
their parents' basement. Sure.
That's right. Living in your
Yeah.
parents' basement, it's the same thing. It's the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit out back, mother-in-law's quarters.
Yeah.
These are not new principles, but the way we've done it is a little bit special because the spaces are complete. They're locked off like clearly, but also we can open back up the doors and we have a big house again. We can open the doors back up. It's amazing. I'm just amazed with it. I mean, I sketched it out a long time ago. I thought about it for many years,
Yeah.
and I thought about where I wanted to graduate one day. As I get older, I don't want to wait till I'm disabled. Somebody put me somewhere, so I
Yeah.
want to be able to make that decision now about what I'm gonna, where I'm gonna be. And so it's
The
part of
you work on so many different diverse asset classes, from hotels to single family homes to
yeah.
live work spaces. It's incredible. What are some of the common misperceptions about redevelopment? Somebody not aware of what's involved with redevelopment. What do you think is a misperception that people just get wrong, that through the years you've gotten right or figured out the hard way?
And it's mostly men who get this wrong
Hmm.
because men conquer,
Yeah.
and women nurture.
Yeah.
And so women are better at this. In fact, most of the people that we teach around the country that really do the best are these women that are doing really great work. And it's this: when men start, and we've seen you do a development or me, or we think we have to do, we're going to do a small development, it's 20 units. Well, 20 units is, you know, maybe, 4 or 5 million, $6 million. I mean, that's a heavy lift for somebody starting. The misconception is that there's something weak about doing one single family house or taking one little property and, turn it into two units.
So size and scale.
Size and scale, start small and build yourself up. If you want to build to that, there's nothing wrong with being a guy that or gal that just does rebuild single family homes the rest of their life and makes a good living and improves their community. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, some of the people I know that do the best, that make the most money, that take the least risk, that have the best quality of life, are doing a bunch of small projects. And so you don't have to be the biggest, the biggest guy on the or gal on
Yeah.
the block. You can do really well, and you can really affect your neighborhood by doing these one at a time. And quite often, the people that don't do them small starting out, they'll work on something for 3 or 4 years. They'll never get it done. They can never raise their money, and they'll just quit.
Sure.
So
Sure.
they never do anything. They never make it, or they do one project and they can't do another one ever, or they're so burnt out they don't want to do it again.
You mentioned a few times about your coaching. Tell us a little bit about your coaching and the program you've set up to help
So
others. Yeah.
back in 2015, a couple of friends of mine from related to the Congress for the New Urbanism around the country got together, and we started the Incremental Development Alliance right here in Duncanville, Texas.
So explain what new urbanism is, just for those that are listening that might not know.
New urbanism is a way of building towns. It's really the way we built towns 100 years ago when we built main streets and mixed use developments, and we built residential mixed close to retail and schools, and we just built sustainable walkable neighborhoods. And then we got away from that through the World War II and through cheap gas prices and cheap land and cars being, we started to sprawl, and people wanted to get away from the cities, and we built really poorly. We in fact, we developed very poor patterns. And new urbanism is basically bringing back what we used to do, just in the modern context
Got it.
of building, you know, places where we have options for driving our car, riding our bicycle, walking. We can walk to school. We can walk to get a haircut or a cup of coffee. We have a mix of uses from lower income to higher income in the same places. And that's basically a short
So
explanation.
you're coaching new urbanism to younger developers, or
Well, we're really coaching people how to rebuild their communities. What new urbanism is a part of that,
okay.
but there's lots of places we work in and on crappy old shopping centers, you know, that we're trying to make better. We're and what we started to do with the Incremental Development Alliance is we realized that the only people that were doing this work were big developers and big companies, and the people that actually cared about their community were the locals. And so we set out on a mission in 2015 to create 1,000 small developers around the country that would do what we're doing, that would become community development corporations for profit. And so that went well for the first several years. And then a couple of years ago, and after COVID, we evolved a group of us: Bernice Radel, Jim Kuhlman, Mike Keene. Bernice is from Buffalo, New York, and Jim is from Minnesota. Mike's from South Bend. We started Neighborhood Evolution. And Neighborhood Evolution was created to create ecosystems in cities all over the country that would cultivate these small local community developers that were committed to their community. And so we call this gentrification, what we do, rather than gentrification, when the big developer comes from out of
Sure.
town and wipes everybody out, wipes all the local natives out,
Hmm.
and so we've seen that so many places. And a lot of our people that we teach today are women of color, you know, of they're people that are older. There are people that are younger. There are people that are just really committed to their community. We're not house flippers. Okay, it's
Hmm.
not a house flip. And and quite often they could be architects make good developers, because architects generally care about their, or planners can care about their communities, and if we can get them out of that risk box that they're in, and try some development, they become really good developers. And the hardest part there is trying to teach people how to actually make money at this on such a small scale. How do you jump into this? How do you get the money? How do you
Yeah.
get investment money? How do you do banking? How do you do the legal? I mean, there's so many things you can never learn. And so it's done real well. And in fact, in South Bend, Indiana, we were there 2 weeks ago. We coached 12 people in one day. Four of us did, and that their total value of the developments they're working on was $30 million,
Wow.
which makes them, as a cohort, the largest developer in South Bend as a
That's
cohort.
incredible.
And so they're from anything from 200,000 to 4 million, in that
Wow.
range, mixture of people. And they're one's a college, one's a professor from the university, one's a little old lady in her neighborhood that just cared about the neighborhood, started fixing houses around
So,
it.
so it's anybody that wants to see a better neighborhood for themselves
Anybody,
and their
anybody.
neighbors.
It's and
Yeah.
rebuilding these neighborhoods and building is not just the developer. It takes a whole community. It takes the activists and
Yeah.
media people. It takes us all working together. The developer's just one piece of that.
Um, you're giving a lot of advice. You're teaching a lot. If you could go back in time and give yourself, at 21 years old, one piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give the younger Monty?
It's really easy. I do it all the time. So there's two things that are the most important: humility when I'm up. Okay, when I've just closed a big deal and I think I'm some kind of hot stuff, or when I think I know, humility, and gratitude when I'm down, when the world has gone to heck in a
Yeah.
handbasket, and I just got to get, and so I can stay in this even place and keep my mind and keep focused. And those two things are so important. And because I've experienced, I've done it wrong, I've been cocky when I've got good, and then my legs cut out from under me,
Sure.
and so I really work today at those two things. I think the other thing would be this: is that start off small. Okay, be good, be professional, get really, have your bookkeeping detailed and your legal done right. Do it right. Start small, but do it like a big developer, like a big company would. So do it as a small. So you need all the right people around you. And I was just winging it out there, receipts in my console, and you know didn't take care of business as good as I should have. Today I'm a freak about that stuff,
Sure.
but
You
but
learn from those experiences.
I didn't worry about my credit. I didn't care. I was like, I just need a new car. Back then I wanted new cars and I wanted this. I wanted, you know, living more within my means, really live on 50% of what I make, like really live like that, really, you know, have a more mindset, a more humble mindset, that's what I would say.
If someone wants to get in touch with you about, bringing in new urbanism or coaching to their community, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you and start a program in their local neighborhood?
Yeah, that's great. So it's Monte, Monte, at optionsre.com, optionsre.com. Or my phone number is 214-546-1200. Another thing is I'm really accessible. I have about 500 tenants, and I know them, most of them. I'm really accessible to the people that I work with. It's part of it's part of my mission and
That's
plan.
great. That's great to be so accessible. And I'll be sure to share your contact info uh, during this podcast.
Neighborhoodevolution.com, you know,
Great.
optionsre.com. Those are our two, my two companies there that we
That's
work.
excellent.
Yeah.
Monty, do you have any other kind of last minute thoughts before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I would say this. This is what I often say is that if you're in your community and you're thinking somebody ought to fix that building, somebody ought to do these things, somebody ought to clean up that park, then do it. Do it yourself. Get the reach out to people around the country. There's more and more of us all the time, and build a team to do it. And if you can't do it, if you're not cut out to be the entrepreneur, find the entrepreneur in your neighborhood that is, because
There's
I
always
promise
one.
there's always some crazy entrepreneur that'll do this work, everywhere. So you don't have, it's not everybody's cut out, for it. But yeah, I would say that's what you do. Start where you're at with what you got and do the best you can.
Monte, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks,
All
Robert.
right. Thank you.
Bye.